What about you? Are you married?
No, I'm divorced.
Congratulations. Kids?
No kids.
You've taken care of Alec his whole life. You just make sure you're taking care of yourself, too.
Gloria, don't mention this to Mr. Alec. Or to anybody.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't feel. My mind fills up into a creature, and it haunts me somewhere much deeper. I got nightmares in my head, I fear.
On June 7, 2021, Maggie Murdaugh wasn't living in the Moselle property. She was living here at the Edisto Beach House.
Do you feel that Maggie's been lost in all of this?
Absolutely.
Caroline Price and Shelley West met Maggie Murdaugh in college.
I don't think she wasn't the type of person that would stand out in a crowd, but she was always there, to back everybody up.
She wasn't flashy at all.
Do you believe Maggie Murdaugh was a hostage in her marriage? Was she a hostage or something else? If something else, what? Salon describes Maggie as the best case version of the submissive wife fantasy, a nice lady with a fancy house who wants to be thought well of and refers to her son's victims as that poor girl. In the next breath, she urges her husband, a man who lures in his marks by quoting Bible verses, to make sure that the young woman's family won't get justice. Some have said Patricia Arquette was miscast as Maggie Murdaugh. What do you think? Others, like Salon, described Arquette's depiction as aggravatingly honest. I tend to gravitate toward the latter assessment. But it's also not quite as simple as that. Before we get to that, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. Bear in mind there are already 2 other reviews of these episodes. Make sure you have watched Murdaugh, Death in the Family to appreciate really the depth of the analysis here. There are also some errors in the dramatization that we still need to talk about. Meanwhile, if you're finding this analysis worthwhile, please do hit the thanks button and let's get started.
This boy's gone through more vehicles at 19 than I have my whole life. You keep messing around like that, you're going to win yourself another drinking ticket. I'm going to get some hydrogen peroxide for that.
Thanks, go. Jesus Christ, dude. Oh, my God.
If we slow that scene down, before he can yank the branch from his truck's wheel well, the adults are on top of him. I'm quoting from that same article from Salon. Alex spouts angry curses as Maggie laments that Paul has gone through more vehicles at the age of 19 than she has in her entire life. But what is interesting here is you see Maggie stern one moment and extremely warm and forgiving the next. You would imagine that from another breed of mom, this stern admonishment would be a prelude to a prescriptive punishment, as Salon puts it. And a punishment that I think maybe would be appropriate would be to take away the kid's keys and take away the vehicle perhaps for a week. Or how about a good grounding? You can't go out drinking for the next week or month or whatever. I mean, what would you say is appropriate in this situation?
She was a dutiful wife to, supporting Alec. He's larger than life. He takes, she stands back. So she just, supported him, was quiet. She was a good mom. She doted on those boys almost too much because, they didn't even really know how to wash their clothes.
Tell the jury a little bit about Maggie. How would you describe her as somebody, just so they can get an idea of who she was?
Maggie was sweet. She was kind of a free spirit. She was always up for anything that was going on. She loved her family. She loved her boys. Buster and Paul were her world.
Do you notice Alec Murdaugh on the right-hand side there rocking, apparently grief-stricken over the fact that he murdered his own wife? Obviously he's trying to win the case that he didn't murder her, but he was actually convicted of murdering her, but he's trying to do his best at looking the part of the grieving husband. Did anyone buy that? Did the jury buy that? I do think it's interesting that her sister describes her boys as her world, not including her husband at that point.
Loved her boys. Buster and Paul were her world. She loved my parents. We, joked how we would grow old together and take care of them. And she was just a really, really good person.
But was Maggie too sweet and too dutiful? I mean, if she was, that suited Alec Murdaugh to a T. But think about it, given the storm that was coming. What does she do with this information after Paul plunges the family into another scandal? Very little. While Alex busily pressures the witnesses to refrain from telling the cops the truth, Mother helps her drunken boy into bed and promises to buy him a phone to replace the one lost in the accident. Maggie is a woman who appears to view her underage son's years of DUIs and car crashes as a phase, another way boys will be boys. In hindsight, was that the right way to deal with Paul Murdaugh? Was that the right way of dealing with Paul, given what ultimately happened?
You think all this can last? There's a storm coming, Mr. Wayne.
And that lack of boundaries with her younger son led to inevitable catastrophe. And the lack of boundaries and taking responsibility for that catastrophe led to another, a catastrophe which actually extinguished Maggie's life as well. It can sometimes be ridiculously easy to look into the trappings of someone else's life and make easy decisions on what's appropriate and what's not. It's a lot harder when you are the one trapped, you are the one bound, you are the one snared in strings, inexpensive possessions, complicated arrangements, and webs of manipulation. I mean, is there any doubt that Murdaugh tried to buy his wife's affections, and perhaps for a while he succeeded? Back to the article. While that was happening, according to the series' dramatized version of events, Maggie finds out that Alec had been lying to her about his ongoing prescription drug habit. She's also wearing an expensive tennis bracelet he's gifted her, supposedly for no reason at all. Maggie knows her pill-addicted, philandering husband will negotiate a way out of paying. No price is too high to keep her sons out of trouble, and the Murdaugh family's reputation sterling in their tight South Carolina community. The bracelet remains on Maggie's wrist. And what does that indicate? This bracelet remaining on her wrist, what does that show?
You're all going to wonder how you ever thought you could live so large and leave so little for the rest of us.
I do think the scene where Maggie pretends to be someone else reveals a lot about the inner conflict she felt, that on some level she knew what was happening was untenable. Later, Maggie laments what could have been as she converses with a stranger she meets at a resort lounge. Her cocktail companion is a single mother and a physician who traveled the world with Doctors Without Borders. This is such a good scene because we see that Maggie can't bear to tell this beacon of independence the truth of who she is. And so she makes up an ideal fantasy. And this shows us that Maggie cannot be honest with herself. Maggie can't deal with the reality of the situation she's in, the reality of their life. And so what does she say? She says that she is single, that she never had children, that she runs a successful landscape architecture business and would rather be at a beach house with her dog.
To be honest, I'd rather be at my beach house with my dog. It's, really the only place that I can be. Just be.
Sounds lovely.
Life is not perfect, but...
And that part, I suspect, is true because that is where she ends up, at her beach house, just before she dies. And that's why she's got to be lured from there back to Moselle. And I did a video on that. I'll put a link to that at the end of this video, but also in the description.
Maggie called me that day and said she was at Edisto. She had some men working on the house.
She was having some work done at Edisto on June 7th?
Yes, just maintenance work, getting it ready for the summer.
And if Maggie at a certain point was locked in and tied up, bought and paid for by Alec, well, we know at the time of her death she wasn't. She was asserting her independence. She was living somewhere else. And dutiful wife be damned, she was about to divorce her husband.
She was having work done on the home ahead of a big 4th of July celebration.
Mr. Randolph was not doing well at all, and Alec really wanted her to come home that night. She hadn't planned on.
She texted me. In the text, Maggie said, Alec wants me to come. She texted.
When Maggie is on vacation and she tells her friend at the bar, life is not perfect, but it is good, and that makes me happy. Well, that is a recipe for all of us to be lulled into a false sense of security. If happiness or that sense of life is good, if that's the only measure that we make, right, about others, about ourselves, about our lives, about our world, that is a way to be lulled into a false sense of security. That's certainly not critical thinking. Because the critical aspect here isn't just whether life is good for you. Is it good in general? Is it good for the people around you as well? It's not good if people around you are dying. Surely there are mothers who'd reason they'd do anything to protect their children. Even so, one wonders how many parents would go as far as she does. Maggie's Faustian trade of other people's pain for her stature and comfort, however, has enough familiarity to make some of us stuff down a frustrated scream.
Yeah, you have to sacrifice a lot of things to make them the men that you know that they can be. But seeing them shine, everything that you gave up to get them there, it's all worth it.
That's quite an interesting point from the salon writer. While it's true to say that Maggie spent a substantial portion of her life in her marriage as an enabler of Alex and also of Paul, to her credit, she seemed to smell the coffee towards the end, which is why she was trying to withdraw and restart her life. Although trying to make a fresh start like Virginia Giuffre tried to do is commendable, it's easier said than done. Making a fresh start after a lifetime of bad habits, a lifetime of going down paths of least resistance, a lifetime of really lying to yourself, a lifetime of comfort, a lifetime of allowing oneself in a way to have your affections bought, that is something that is quite difficult to then leave and start a kind of a different life. And even if you are up for that, even if you are ready to do that, even if you decide to do that, are other people going to allow you to do that?
Once you've done what you had to, they'll never let you do what you want to.
Start fresh.
There's no fresh start in today's world.
So what do you think about the notion that Maggie was a willing prop for a terrible mate?
I think that they had heard that Maggie told me she was seeking a divorce, is why they were so adamant at talking to me. She did tell me she was on Edisto permanently. She told me she was seeking a divorce. She did mention one time that she was looking for some sort of investigator.
Undoubtedly, there was a time when Maggie was a prop and a willing one. Then later, she was just a prop, and eventually she became, I think, an unwilling one. She did become a hostage in her own marriage, which is why she tried to extricate her way out of it. Easier said than done, especially when your husband is a lawyer. But it was too little too late when she initiated that process in a real and meaningful way. By then, Alec had turned to the dark side. Alec murdered Maggie because she knew too much and because she was a threat to him. Had she left him earlier, she wouldn't have known as much or been as much of a threat to him because of what she knew. So why did he murder her? Well, if she did leave him, he would lose her assets at a time when the walls were closing in. And think about it, at that time he was facing a kind of financial crunch. He really needed them. He really needed her assets. It reminds me of the scenario in the murder of Jennifer Doulos. Photos knew he had to murder her before she divorced him as a way to secure her fortune. And we know that she was murdered in the middle of a highly contentious divorce. By the way, do you remember this?
Oh, we can just visualize it because the facts show us what happened. Whoever committed this murder has her phone in one hand, has their phone in the other hand, and they're making these calls back and forth because that's the only way that movement can happen, portrait to landscape of Maggie's phone.
After she was murdered at 9:06:12 p.m., Maggie's phone changes orientation. 2 seconds later, Alex calls Maggie, no answer. And then a few seconds after that, Maggie's phone changes orientation again. And then Alex calls Maggie, no answer. So to summarize, if Maggie was a victim of something before she was shot to death by her own husband, what is that something? Salon reckons it's toxic exceptionalism. What do you all think about that? Toxic exceptionalism is making life worse for all of us every day, according to the article. If you're still hurting for an answer to how we got there, Arquette offers an engrossing, maddening one in her portrait of Maggie Murdaugh, a woman who disregarded what her good life costs the people around her, the society, right? Until the charlatan to whom she gave everything stole that from her as well. So the question is, are we disregarding what the good life is costing those around us as well?
I take what I need from those who have more than enough. I don't stand on the shoulders of people with less.
Isn't that what the Murdaughs did? Stood on the shoulders of people with less. Are we crowing about the good life while making those with less power powerless to stop us? Right now there are wars creeping across several countries, and a shadowy discontent continues to spread well beyond those borders. That discontent is creeping into our neighborhoods. And what happened to the Murdaughs, who not only disregarded a lot of that discontent, but in a real sense created it and profited from it. And so the question is, are we doing anything like that? Where are the Murdaughs of Murdaugh County today? And where will we be in 5 years' time? Food for thought. Well, I'm not going to take it further than that. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.